Dear participants, welcome to the session 3. In session 2, we discussed about the features of punctuated equilibrium approach and the comparison between incrementalism and PEA. In this session, we are going to discuss about the application of PEA across the globe, particularly to India. Frank Baumgartner and Brian Jones have studied a period of 4 decades from 1960 to 2006 about the capital punishments given in America. At the initial stages, the basis for the capital punishments were morality, constitutionality, and fairness to error. These were the criteria on the basis how the capital punishments were given. Later, because of George W. Bush Jr. policies, particularly the electoral changes, have brought a sudden shift in this capital punishment, and inefficiency, cost, and possible wrongful death became the basis for the capital punishments. The second example which can be applied to the current scenario is Donald Trump's the immigration policy. In 1924, there was an Immigration Act in America. Recently, Donald Trump has given a cut in the legal immigration of this Act of 1924, and the DREAM Act, that is called as the acronym DREAM, means Development, Relief, Education and Alien Minors Act. The DREAM Act is called as Development, Relief, Education and Alien Minors Act, has got a cut, or you can say downsized, because of Trump policy. This act gives the permanent residence status to the minors coming to or immigrated to America. Particularly after 2017, those residents who are consecutively residing in America for 4 years and are aged below 16, and when the act has been passed, there must be within 12 to 35. There are certain criteria in order to determine the citizenship of America. Now it has been downsized, and they cannot claim the citizenship status of the parents as well as married children and siblings of the residents who are living in America. Secondly, Trump has continuously discouraged the immigration from certain nations like Iran, Yemen, Syria, Libya, Venezuela and North Korea. It is completely a sudden and drastic shift from usual US policy. The conditions led were the state-sponsored terrorism, political instability in their nations, as well as the security threat and not following the public safety of USA. So, whatever may be the criteria, there was a sudden shift by the Trump administration recently by deviating from the past policies. So, these are the applicative part, you can say, of punctuated equilibrium approach. Coming to the Indian context, though identifying the punctuated equilibrium approach in application to Indian context is little difficult, but we made an attempt to observe where the application is feasible. The first example which we can propose is regarding the liberal reforms. Till 1990s, since from the emergence of Indian Constitution in 1950, we have followed the Nehruvian socialism, where the state-led society intervening in the public life for the welfare of the citizens. This was challenged by the emergence of new public management, or you can say the liberal economic reforms, by integrating the domestic economy with the world economy. It is complete drift from the socialism proposed by Nehru. Secondly, in the current scenario, we can take the abrogation of Article 370. Abrogation of Article 370 is a sudden policy drift of the current government, though it has its benefits as well as disadvantages. The government says that because of various reasons like uniformity and stability, political stability, and this abrogation is necessity, it has its own disadvantages too. So in the current scenario, abrogation of 370 can be applied to the Indian context. The third one is demonetization, where the government declared that the 500 rupee notes as well as 1000 rupee notes are no more valid. So this demonetization is a complete shift from the usual thing. So n number of another example like triple talaq and GST being introduced in the fiscal policy can be given in the Indian context. Dear participants, so far we have learnt about the conceptualization and comparison between the incrementalism and PEA along with its application in federal government and India. Let us look through the critical appraisal of punctuated equilibrium approach. The critical appraisal here is the innovative policies cannot be considered under punctuated equilibrium approach. Whatever the government initiates as an innovative approach, everything cannot be brought under the umbrella of punctuated equilibrium approach, because it might be innovative in one sense and it is incremental in the another sense. So most of the scholars do criticize this approach, that not every innovative model has come through the stasis period as such. That is what, not necessarily it is equilibrium. Secondly, the punctuated equilibrium approach, even though it has arisen as a dispute between pro and anti-incrementalists, it never shunned the incrementalism. Even after implementation of a public policy, the punctuated equilibrium approach has propagated for incrementalism over a longer period of time. The third one, it never overlooked disruptive dynamics, that is, many political actors who are going to influence the policy making. And finally, the transformation may occur for progress, not necessarily as an exogenous shock. That is, public policies not necessarily shall receive shock before its formulation. Even for the sake of progress also, one can frame the policies. With this, we can conclude the conceptualization features as well as the critical appraisal of the punctuated equilibrium approach. So before concluding the session, I would like to summarize the entire sessions. So what we have learnt so far. The punctuated equilibrium approach began as a study of agenda change. The change became the dominant criteria as a shift in one policy to another policy. Later, it was adopted to transformed to understand the mechanisms as such, that is, the underlying or hidden mechanisms in the public policies. The punctuated equilibrium approach can be understood to analyze the complex social systems. It can be applied to the organization in decision making. And finally, policy change as a feedback processes in political institutions. So, punctuated equilibrium approach is going to influence a policy change as a feedback in political institutions. So, thank you.